So, is life meant to be a certain way, or do we make it that way? There's so many people that talk about how it is that it was meant to be. And the funny thing about it is that I hardly ever hear people say that it was meant to be when something good happens to them. And if something good happens to someone else, then we sometimes might say, yeah, it was meant to be. You know, they were meant to be together and all of that. And I think that's extremely opportunistic, if not hypocritical. Because here's the thing, right? When we talk about things that were meant to be by whom? Now, if we're religious or spiritual, then we'll say it's meant to be by the Almighty, by Allah, by God, by the universe. But how do we know? And if it was meant to be, then why is there any point in having to put in an effort to achieve it? Why should we exert ourselves in the accomplishment of things that are supposed to be good for us if it was meant to be? Who decides when something was meant to be and when it wasn't? Who even knows what was truly meant to be? Because I'm not saying that some things are not truly meant to be. I'm not going to insert myself into a space of divinity to assume that I know enough to determine what was or wasn't written. But what I do know is that if I don't put in an effort for something, I can't blame the outcome on fate or destiny or taqdeer. I have to take accountability for that. Otherwise, where does it start and where does it stop? Who do we hold accountable and who do we let off the hook? So when we say it was meant to be, we are resigning ourselves to the outcome because we've given up trying to change it, or to influence it differently, or to even learn from it. Because that's the most critical part, I think. The most critical part is not about whether we're taking accountability for it or not. That's really important as well. But the most critical part is that when we say it was meant to be, we don't reflect on it to be able to learn important lessons from it, so that we might discover how it is that we might have contributed towards why it was meant to be. I think it's opportunistic, extremely opportunistic, when we resign ourselves to that. I said that and I'll say it again. It's opportunistic. We are opportunists when we want to take credit for our good efforts and outcomes and our successes. But when we fail at something, or when life fails us or deals us a blow that we didn't see coming, we say it was meant to be. There's a complexity of choices that we make on a daily basis. And the less mindful we are about those choices and the consequences of those choices, the more inclined we are to believe that it wasn't our fault, the outcome. And that's where we go wrong. We go wrong in looking and determining whose fault it was and who's to blame and what's to blame and who let us down and all of that. There's merit in doing that, in reflecting on that, and understanding that, so that you know who is reliable, who isn't reliable. But when that becomes the only focus point, when that becomes the end point, where you judge and you stop and you say, well, it's because of them and because of this and because of that, what are you doing about it yourself? How is it that you are going to bring yourself to bear on it so that you can achieve it? And then that leads us to other important questions as well, about dreams and goals and aspirations and opportunities and things like that. Because when do we own our life? When do we own our contribution to the people around us? And when do we own our efforts towards being a certain way towards others, or realizing what impact we have on them? You see, the victim mindset, that thing that no one likes me to talk about because everyone feels as if I'm judging them or I'm putting them down or I'm making light of their drama in their life and things like that. It's not. If you're in a victim headspace, you need to realize you're in a victim headspace. Otherwise, you're just going to keep doing yourself nasty favors and you're going to be blaming the universe for it. So when you're in the victim headspace, when you believe that things are happening to you and people are doing things to you and all of that, you lose sight of what you're actually dealing with. But critically, you lose sight of your agency. Remember agency, that fantastic thing that no one wants to claim, but everyone wants to accuse others of exercising it when it works against them? Yeah, that thing, that choice that we make when we believe that others are deliberate in how it is that they're treating us, but we must be understood in how it is that we're treating them. So if we treat others badly, then you need to understand, hey, you don't know what I'm going through. You don't know how life has been for me. You don't know how difficult it is. And then from their side, because you couldn't come through for them, are they supposed to say, well, it was meant to be? No, right? Because that would be extremely untrue, false, fake, delusions, delulu, like they like to say these days. And that's what we seem to forget. We seem to forget that we have impact. And because we forget that we have impact, we only focus on how someone is reacting to the impact that we have on them, and then we blame them for not treating us nicely. Now, where does it start? Where does it stop? Well, according to what most people think, it starts and stops at the fact that it was meant to be. Seriously, how selective, how opportunistic can we possibly get that we want to write off everything that we get wrong and everything that we don't do for others and all of that? And every time we fall short, that was just meant to be. Meant to be by whom? Are we saying that the Almighty, or whatever it is, that divine force that you might believe in, are we saying that that is so malicious, so deliberate, that if you're having a good day, they're going to test you so that you can see if you can overcome the test, but it was meant to be? It doesn't make sense, does it? And that's the problem, is that when life doesn't make sense, then we experience duress. Because we know we're putting in a certain thing and we have an expectation of how that was supposed to be either reciprocated, or what returns we were supposed to get from that effort, or from that investment, or from the time and the dedication. And when it doesn't happen, we don't stop to question, hey, what did I miss here? What was I thinking? What did I not consider? Was I supposed to have known about this other thing that was going to affect it? And did I maybe drop the ball in my homework that I did? Or was there just no reasonable way for me to know because it was just outside of my line of sight? And when we start looking at it from that perspective, we can do something with that information. We can try again, we can improve, and we can build, and things like that. Then when you look at things, it's not meant to be anymore. Now it's there because you put in the effort to achieve it. But there's things that are always going to be out of your control. Sometimes you get lucky because there's a fortuitous alignment of different events and different lives that cross each other's paths, and that creates the perfect setting for you. And sometimes the opposite is true. There is the perfect alignment, not necessarily fortuitous because you don't feel it's a good fortune, but things just come together in the perfect storm, and you look at it and you think, I'm cursed. Why is it that we're ready to say we're blessed or we're cursed, but we're not ready to say, I should have known better? I should have done better. I should have been better. I should have expected more from myself. I should have allowed myself to be human. I should have allowed myself to take a breather so that I wouldn't be overwhelmed by something that was unrelated to it. Why is it that everyone must always understand where we're coming from, but we don't understand where anyone else is coming from? That's the victim mindset. The victim mindset is so deeply entrenched in how it is that we approach life these days, that we see it as having to honor someone else's emotions just because they're in a victim headspace. But we won't call it a victim headspace. We'll call it some other trauma, or some toxic abuse that they received from someone who didn't treat them the way they needed to be treated or wanted to be treated. Or how it is that something that they did was so important to them and no one else thought it was important, so that just like knocked them off their feet. Life happens. Life happens all the time, and it happens in ways that you cannot control. It happens in ways that you can't even predict, because the amount of variables at play is so much that it's going to happen. And more often than not, from what I've seen, personal experience, first-hand observation, first-hand accounts, not textbooks, real life, is that the reason why it is that we find ourselves stuck in cycles that we can't break out of is because we're not willing to do something that just seems so daunting. Fear of what might happen if we do something, or the fear of what might happen if we contemplate not doing something. We're driven by fear more often than not, and that again is a victim mindset. You're driven by fear of what it is that you have to do, or else something is going to happen. Why aren't we driven by purpose? Why aren't we driven by conviction in the value of what it is that we believe we need to create, or the benefit of what it is we want others to experience? We're so fixated on not being judged that we end up judging ourselves, or we judge others for judging us. Everyone's judging everyone, and everyone's beating down on everyone because everyone wants to be seen before they want to see, and everyone wants to be heard before they want to hear or listen. It's exhausting. That's why we have so many problems in society these days, because everyone is in a victim headspace. And I say everyone, I mean it's probably 90% of people out there, including the ones who think they're living their best life. Because when you're living your best life, who are you denying that have rights over you? Or do you not recognize their rights because in your mind, you must live your best life and they must just understand that you're going to put yourself first because no one else puts you first? Here's some news. When you put yourself first, you very quickly lose the sweetness of life. When you put yourself first, you very quickly discover that what you needed to enjoy, the sweetness, the joy, the fulfillment of that endeavor, you very quickly discover that that is actually not going to be sustainable. And that's why you then spiral and we escalate our need for escape and our need for distractions. And then we become driven by social standards and social norms and social stigmas and social symbols. And then the more we become capable of acquiring those and living within that construct, and we get that artificial validation from people who know nothing about us, we think, hey, we're accomplished. Because look, the influencers are doing the same thing. Those gurus are talking about how this is what success looks like. Success doesn't look like anything out there. Success is what feels like in here. And you can be as successful as ever. I mean, look at some of the scum, the most successful people in the world. Is that what success looks like to you? Trophies and trinkets and obscene levels of wealth and monopolization of people's lives and all sorts of things that make you feel powerful because you need to feel powerful. Is that what success looks like? If it does, then why aren't those people happy? Why aren't they thriving? Or hold on, are we also then distorting what thriving looks like? We need a fundamental shift in how it is that we frame what life is supposed to be like. And the biggest problem we've got is that we're taking that framing of life, that perspective, we're taking it from others and we're trying to implement it. We don't have a conscious, reflected connection with what it is that we want to do for ourselves in life. So we're driven by what it is that you're supposed to, and he's supposed to, and she's supposed to, and they're supposed to. And if they don't, then that means that I'm the victim, that I'm being done in, and I'm not getting what I deserve, and all of that. So back to the question, was it meant to be? If it was meant to be, then don't complain about the rights that others do not fulfill of yours, because it was meant to be, wasn't it? If someone doesn't do for you what it is that you have a right for them to do for you because they're living their best life and that's getting in the way of it, you don't get a right to complain about it if that's the code of life that you want to live by. Everyone wants fulfillment and significance, but no one wants to treat others as significant. No one wants to prioritize what someone else has a right to expect from them, but they want themselves to be prioritized by those around them. And the ones that don't have that expectation, but are in a victim mindset, they are the doormats. They are the ones that offer themselves up to be walked on by everyone else. And here's the thing about doormats. You'll be so focused on trying to be enough for everyone else that the people that have rights over you, the people that you have impact on, true impact, they get neglected along the way. And then when you see the way they respond to you and you see how it is that the people who treated you like a doormat didn't appreciate you, you then slip back and you think, well, maybe it's just me. Maybe I just don't deserve this. Maybe it wasn't meant to be. Maybe I wasn't meant to be happy, or I wasn't meant to find my soulmate, or I wasn't meant to have that life that I want. Are we starting to see how ridiculous this meant to be mentality is? There are certain things that may be written and certain things that we wouldn't ever have any clue about whether it was written or not. Because there's a whole lot of things that are written relative to cause and effect. And this we can prove on a daily basis. It's a lived reality. It's not something you have to theorize about. It's not something you have to go and try and come up with highfalutin philosophies and look at gurus and monks and all sorts of things to try and get them to give you insight about how life works. Life works the way you reflect on it. Keep it simple. Why do we try to complicate things so much? We've lost the essence of being human because we're trying to be something other than human because we need someone to see us as being greater than human. If you don't have a healthy self-esteem, all of these things become 10 times more difficult for you to navigate. Because you become defined by whether or not you're good enough, whether or not you're doing the right thing, whether or not you are perceived in the right way. Because, not just because you want them to perceive you that way or something, but because the structures within you which you try to operate, they won't cooperate with you unless they perceive you a certain way. And that's where the fear sets in. Think about it. I'll say that again. Because the structures, the social structures and the norms within which we need to operate, like a corporate structure, for example, it's an easy example. It has to perceive us a certain way for us to enjoy cooperation in return, right? Otherwise, you're going against the grain. And a lot of people don't want to go against the grain because they don't think that they'll be able to survive if they do. So when you push against someone else's power structure that you're operating in and you don't realize you're operating in their power structure, that's when you very quickly come to realize that unless you comply and conform to what it is that the norms are, the demands of you, unless you do that, you're just not going to get what you want. You're not going to get what you need. You're not going to earn your bonus. You're not going to get your salary potentially, or you're going to get other disciplinary action taken against you. And all of that is fear-driven. It's a big stick approach to trying to make you feel good about something that you did. It's ridiculous. We've turned ourselves into not even sheep. There must be a level lower than that. We're not herded anymore. We coerced, we goaded into being a certain way. And at the top of all of that, we're taking religion and spirituality and scripture and we're beating each other into shape because you will, or else there's a divine wrath that's going to come on you. There's some other intervention that you're going to have to suffer. There's some other consequence in the afterlife that you're going to have to bear. When did we all become divine to the point where we can actually speak on what's going to happen after death? What the state of someone? Where we can pronounce on someone's convictions and their spirituality? We can't. The only thing we can do is we can explain and provide feedback and input and take action on what we experience in their behavior. Because that's the other problem as well. When it's meant to be, we then automatically insert assumptions about what their motives and their intentions are. We don't consider anything beyond that. Because we assume that what we believe to be true about it is true. What does that do? It shuts your inclination down from wanting to reflect and understand and discover and have engagement, meaningful engagement. Why did you do that? What were you thinking? What were you intending to achieve? What made you think that I would respond that way, or that is something that I would appreciate or like? Why is it that when I communicate a certain way, you don't register? There's no exercise or there's no effort put into trying to reach that kind of understanding, because this victim headspace just beats us into a space of needing to feel as if we know. So we can't be proven wrong. So we're not going to tell people what we know. We're just going to treat that as a closely guarded secret of, I know. You don't underestimate how much I know. Because we want to feel as if we're in control. Control is such a myth. It's such a distraction. It's actually sad. Because it works with the assumption that if you don't control, you're not going to be able to prevail. You're not going to be significant. You're not going to have relevance. So we control out of the fear of becoming irrelevant. And then we self-sabotage in that process. And when we self-sabotage in that process, what do we end up doing? We end up failing at things. We end up being disappointed. We end up feeling betrayed because what we were asking for was not reasonable from the person we were asking to get it from. Or we were asking for something that might have been our right, but we didn't realize what position or what state the other person was in, so we just kept demanding something from them, or leaving them feeling as if their trials and their struggles was irrelevant. Where am I going with this? I think where I'm going with this is that we need to realize that if we keep resigning things to external forces and external influences, whether or not those things are bearing down on us, we need to first consider what it is that we choose to do in the face of that. What is it if we see disaster approaching? Do we stand and brace ourselves for it, or we take steps to either avoid it or mitigate it? It's like how they say that you mustn't panic. And usually people tell you, well, when you're panicking and someone says you mustn't panic, it's usually the perfect time to panic. But the problem with panicking, with going into that frenzied state, is that you lose sight of everything that you can do to potentially overcome what it is that's coming at you, to fend it off, to do what it is that you need to do so that it doesn't get the better of you. But we won't get to that point if we're constantly believing that we're on the receiving end of some divinely ordained outcome that we just have no control over. So we find ourselves stuck in bad relationships, bad marriages, bad situations, bad jobs and things like that. And because of the fear of what will happen if we try to do something about it, we don't do anything about it. And we succumb. And there's a cost. There's a massive cost when we do that, but we don't realize what the cost is because we're more focused on what will be avoided, what we need to avoid, what we're afraid will happen if we don't submit. And that cost is your peace of mind, your capacity, your ability to show up for the people around you, the joy with which it is that you are going to approach things in your life, or the absence of that joy in how you're going to approach things in your life. People in your life. How it is that you're going to share moments together, whether you're even going to be available to share those moments, or what's your demeanor going to be when you show up in those moments. How is it that you're going to show up for your family, that you supposedly exhausting yourself to serve, but when you need to show up as a family unit, you're too exhausted, too tired, too angry, too frustrated, too annoyed, too done feeling taken for granted that it's just blah. Let's just do it because we have to do it. It's a token gesture, it's a token occasion, it's a token gathering, it's a token function, it's a token outing. Everything is about because we should, not because we want to. Nothing's meant to be just because it was meant to be. You have to exhaust every option available to you before you can resign yourself to say, well, hey, it just wasn't meant for me to have this. But most of the time, you don't exhaust every option. Most of the time, you only exhaust the safe options, the ones that won't be too damning for you if you fail, the ones that prevent you from being too visible in your efforts to try, because you're afraid of what people are going to say. You're afraid of what they think of you. You need them to see you a certain way. You need to posture and have this grandiose appearance about how successful you are, how it is that you're so strong and resilient despite having such a terrible life and such a terrible partner and such a terrible relationship. You're still standing and you're taking care of your kids and you're taking care of your family and whatever it is. Your family needs more than that. You need more than that. But if you're going to keep surrendering to the difficulties of life, the trials of life, and the things that you think you have to do because you were commanded to do it that way and there's nothing more to it, then you're actually giving up your agency to be able to do things in a way that will still accomplish the outcomes that you need to accomplish, but with a sense of joy and fulfillment and love and harmony and respect and dignity and all of the other wonderful things that actually gives you something to look forward to in life, or gives you something that's worth reminiscing about. We need to get better than this. And the only way we're going to get better than this is if we stop being victims in our own life. Life happens because that's what life is supposed to do. If life was only going to happen when you were ready for it, or when you wanted it to happen, or when you needed it to happen, then it wouldn't be life. and you would be bored as hell, and there would be no fulfillment because everything would be predictable, and there would be no sense of accomplishment in acquiring anything that is worth acquiring. When did we lose it? When did we lose our way so much that resilience now looks like hanging on? That's not resilience. Resilience is not hanging on. Resilience is not getting up every day and going through the drudgery of life and believing that that's your resilience because you haven't given up yet. You haven't taken your life, or you haven't thrown your life away. That's not resilience. That's a very, very unhealthy form of tenacity. And that's something that we need to understand the difference between. Tenacity, resilience, conviction, purpose, understanding. These things are not even discussed in the mental health space because everyone's struggling with mental health issues. No, you're a human. You don't have mental health issues. You feel a certain level of emotional duress because life is difficult for you to navigate. Why it's difficult for you to navigate, why it's difficult for you to figure out. That's what you need to be solving as a problem, not some mental illness nonsense. You are human. Do you even remember what that looks like, what it feels like, how it's supposed to be experienced? Or is everything just meant to be and you're just waiting for the inevitable outcome to see what it was written for you? I don't even know what to say about this because I honestly cannot fathom. I can't connect with why it is that so many people just resign themselves to the inevitability of what they think will never come right for them. Nothing is inevitable except death. Seriously, there is absolutely nothing that is entirely inevitable except death. How many times don't we hear of miracle survivals and miracle recoveries and miracle outcomes? How many times don't we hear of babies that were stuck under collapsed buildings for weeks and they come out alive? Or people that jump from the 20th or 30th floor of a building and they break a toe. Nothing is inevitable except death. So if you're going to keep surrendering to the things in life that you think are unpleasant or that weigh you down, you're going to be part of the reason why your life sucks. And if you are part of the reason why your life sucks, trust me, you are the reason why the people around you, their life sucks as well. Why? Because you have impact. You have impact on the people around you. Whether you think they look up to you or not is beside the point. That's none of your business. What other people think about you is none of your business. Who you want to be and what impact you want to have is all that you should be concerned about. If you subscribe to a code of life and that code of life dictates that some people have rights over you, that you are duty bound to serve them, then fulfill it, honor it, not because they're treating you well, but because that's your code of life. Because that's what you stand for, that's who you want to be. And I think if this is one simple, very simple, but profoundly important aspect that people need to get, is that you need to live your life in a way that determines who you want to be, not who you have to be. If you're doing something because you have to, but it fundamentally goes against what you want in that regard, because of your value system, not your desires, not your temptations and your whims and fancies, your value system. If you're constantly going to be at odds with that, you can't blame people around you for your anger and your annoyance and your frustration and your lack of fulfillment. You are required to honor your value system. Not everyone else must honor your value system. You need to live by it. And the best thing you can do for anyone else is challenge them to live by theirs. If someone claims to be kind and they're treating you abusively or abruptly or abrasively or whatever it is, then you challenge them about why it is that they're not living up to what they claim is the value they want to live by. If someone claims to be honest, if someone claims to be charitable, and they behave in ways that are selfish or dishonest, challenge them. Don't judge them and call them out and shame them and expose them. Challenge them meaningfully. Because the same way if you slip and you want someone to correct you so that you don't lose yourself to the slippery slope, you should also want to do that for others as well. Not because you want to call them out and prove that you're better than them, but because that is what sincerity looks like. If you see someone else faltering, you need to put yourself in their position, understand why it is that they may not realize that they're faltering, or what it is that might be distracting them from the fact that they are faltering. And then you must find a way to correct them in the way that you would want to be corrected if you were in their position. And before you assume that you will never be like that and you have never been that way and all of that, don't go there. If you're going to start looking at life as if you're better than that and you didn't do that and you'll never do that, you're setting yourself up for a lot of pain, because that creates blind spots, and the blind spots it creates is what will then lead you to find yourself in a situation that will demand the same thing of you, and then you'll be tested to see whether you pass or fail. And it's not because there's a divine test that was brought to bear on you because, hey, you're having a good life. No, we need to give you something to be tested about. No, it's the consequences of your choices. That's what life is about, consequence. And if we don't achieve the consequences that we want to achieve, we need to question our methods. We need to question our understanding. We need to question our awareness of what else is influencing those outcomes so that we can incorporate it into our efforts and our plans and our designs to achieve those outcomes. And that's how you avoid being in a victim headspace. You don't wait for things to fall in place. You don't expect everyone to cooperate so that you can achieve what you need to. If people are not going to cooperate with you and something is important to you, you need to find a way to achieve it without their cooperation. Not sit there and slump and become depressed because, oh no one loves me and no one is doing what I need from them and all of that. Everyone's waiting for someone else to support them before they are willing to support others. Everyone's waiting for someone else to inspire them before they're looking for inspiration themselves. Isn't it tiring to live like that? To live waiting all the time, put your life on hold, look around you and think like, oh no, not this again, and then you stop there. Own your life. Step up. Claim your agency. I can't say reclaim it because most people didn't even claim it in the first place. Understand that you have impact. Understand that you have the ability to influence outcomes. Understand that you have the ability to be able to create joy out of nothing. And if you start exercising those abilities, not waiting for someone to give you permission before you do, watch how your life changes. Watch how things shift for you in a way that you won't be able to say, oh, the universe is being kind to me. Come on. Since when did the universe start revolving around our needs? So we need to whisper the right things and give the right signals so that we can get what we want. Where did we come up with this stuff? How did we get to this point where we're so whimsical and so flimsy and so desperate for positive outcomes that we lost sight of our agency to actually influence it? It's our fear of things being unpleasant if we take action that prevents us from doing the right thing. And that's on you. You need to hold yourself accountable for what you claim to stand for. And if you're not willing to do that, you lose the right to complain about how your life is. If you want to protect someone else from you doing the right thing, you lose the right to complain about them treating you badly. And I know that's a bitter pill to swallow for a lot of people. But that is what life is about. So if you avoid that, if you avoid getting someone else to experience the consequences of their behavior, because you don't want to be that person, you don't want to expose them, or you don't want to, whatever it is that is driving your reasoning for not taking that step, then you don't get to say it was meant to be. That's cowardly. It wasn't meant to be. You chose it. And that's an even more bitter pill to swallow, because lots of people don't want to recognize how they contribute to their own condition. And more than that, which is something I'll leave for another day, is most of us are not willing to reflect on what we took from life's experiences rather than what life was throwing at us. What you take from someone else's behavior, what you assume to be true about that behavior, and what you think it means about who you are and what you can expect from life. that is infinitely more important than anything that was intended for you. You can choose, like I said before, you can choose to make beautiful art out of scrap metal, or you can sit and complain about the fact that you're getting useless junk. That's all up to you. And when you start figuring that part out, you'll be able to actually create something amazing out of your life instead of waiting for life to be amazing. I'm Zaid Ismail. I hope I provoked you to a point of wanting to at least stop and question something that you've been taking for granted, or that your head is a blind spot, because until someone does, you'll never ever have reason to change the trajectory of your life, because you're waiting for it to go a certain way before you do. Take care.